Prima facie defect for candidate Ike, candidate of the Bring a Chair Party for public advocate, finding that the certificate of acceptance was filed on January 18, 2019. It was due by statute on January 16, 2019. It was filed late. It's attached as Exhibit C with a clock in. Do you have interference?
Yes.
Can you say your name for the record?
You all can hear me?
Yes.
Ify Ike. So first of all, thank you all for, are you ready?
Yeah. Say good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. Yes, it's an afternoon. So a couple things. First of all, I'm proud to not only have been in this very spirited special election, and on behalf of the over 5,000 signers and petitioners, I'm proud to be the nominee of the Bring a Chair Party, which is part of the commemoration of Ms. Shirley Chisholm. I'm not sure if you all have the written petition that I've shared with BOE last week, Tuesday, but the way I see it, there are a couple different issues that are presented here, one of which is beyond you all's control, which has to do with our team not being notified about this 16th date by our hired attorney, which is not an issue that you all have to resolve. But the issue that I'm raising before the commissioners is whether I, as the nominee for the party of Bring a Chair, timely submitted the certificate of acceptance. My argument is that I present before the commissioners that while mistake of law and ineffective counsel are not defenses here, although they were contributing factors in my awareness of the January 16th filing date, the issue of notice is within the control of the agency. As both a first-time candidate and as one like many other candidates who had hired counsel to inform our team about the upcoming dates. There are several tools that a candidate, even if they do not have an attorney, relies on. That includes information from the CFB board, which we all receive throughout this process, but also information from the Board of Elections. And to say the least, correspondence and information during this entire unprecedented citywide election has been confusing, at times inconsistent, and in my case, untimely. Just to step back, and as somebody who I'm sure you all are well versed in this, but as somebody who also is a graduate of CUNY Law, I recognize that we have agencies that provide information, and that information, as an individual who is running to serve a public office, is the information that we should rely on to be able to file and to be able to be in compliance. So while it was mentioned that there is a statute that states when a certificate of acceptance should be in, I also want to state that it is not just about the statutory date, but it's also about the process and the intention. And to the process, we do have, we do state that the final date to file petitions for a candidate in this case was February 14th, of which my team was in compliance with. January. February 14th would actually be a nice day, but that's not the day we're talking about. January 14th. At this time, when we filed after about 7 o'clock p.m., my team had no knowledge of the outstanding documents to be filed, including the certificate of acceptance. The first time we became aware of this was Friday, February 18th at around 4:30 p.m. January 18th at around 4:30 p.m. Our election attorney, who was hired, had called us and told us that she had not informed our team about this. We immediately came over to the BOE, and you will see that it was notarized at the same time that we also had Bring a Chair submitted into the BOE. I also want to raise that it is actually unreasonable and inconceivable that upon filing on the 14th, that the postmarked letter, which I have here, and I think I've also submitted, was postmarked the 15th by the BOE, and it is unreasonable that we would have received that on the 16th. We actually received it after I had already filed my.
If I understand your position.
Okay.
And I'm going to hear from the council, but there is something that the Board of Elections puts out to the public and on our website and the board. It's the calendar
Sure.
that we adopted as a board, which says very clearly on the last day to file a certificate of acceptance of the declaration of nomination was Wednesday, January 16th, 2019.
Sure.
So we have provided that information to the public and it's readily available to everybody. I'm sorry
If I can just, because you actually interrupted me and there's been a lot of spirited conversation.
Yeah, I know,
So
but I'm just
so
letting you know that it's
absolutely,
there.
absolutely. And that information, to be clear, and I can also show you the text, I do have that direct link to that calendar, which I received as well on the 18th. What I am going to argue and push back upon is that the information that we have received throughout this entire process has not been clear as to where they are located on any of the materials on both sites of BOE and CFB. So while it is apparent that there is a calendar, the process by which any candidate, and especially a new candidate, would need to go through some of the most actually cumbersome websites and not necessarily the most organized websites to find that calendar, I am going to push back and say that it's not as easily readily to find. And to be fair, and like I said, I'm not holding the commissioners to be responsible for an individual that we hired to actually have that information. And upon getting that information, I immediately came down and cured based off of the knowledge. I'm also going to push back and say there is one instance on the Board of Election.
Just a question on that point.
Sure.
Staff, do we keep a copy of this at the front desk here and upstairs? So it's not just on our website, right?
It
It's
was at the
located in
front
lobbies?
counter of every borough office as well as our office. And Commissioner, just to correct the record, on February 2nd, the date the proclamation was issued, a preliminary filing calendar reflecting these dates was posted on the website and distributed. The only thing that was not on there was the date of today's hearings, which was to be determined. When you met on Friday the 4th, you set today as a hearing date. That calendar was amended and reposted before the close of business that Friday. In addition, Commissioners, in adopting the rules way in advance of the calling of the special election on December 18th, you specifically direct all persons to consult with the election law. The election law is explicit in section 6-154. And finally, the statute also provides, I should say 146, statute provides that the board, upon the filing of a designated petition or an independent nominating petition for public office, shall send such notice by first-class mail. The candidate chose to file the petitions on the very last day to file. The statute gives them 12 days after the issuance of the date proclamation to file the petitions.
At which I should not be penalized for.
And the statute, the same statute says you have to file.
I don't need your.
Well, please don't interrupt.
You actually just stated, so to be clear.
And the same statute says you have to file the certificate of acceptance within 14 days.
Please say one at a time, please. So.
I apologize. I actually do apologize for interrupting you. First of all, me bringing in our petitions at 7:30 something on that date should not be used as to penalize, just let me finish, to penalize the candidate by which we submitted our filing, which was accepted to 11:59 up until that night. There were people that came after us. So there's nothing wrong with submitting that. I also have video of when we came in, and to your question, I'm sorry, I think that's Jose, I cannot see you around this column. That information was actually not available on the table of 32, I believe we're in 32, 42, that calendar, and the reason, and
What does the law say?
The law specifically provides, Commissioners, that with respect to a special election and an independent nominating petition, candidate has 12 days to file the independent nominating petition for the date of the proclamation, 14 days to submit a certificate of acceptance and declination. That's for every special election, regardless whether it's called by the mayor or the governor.
and go ahead.
And the statute is clear. So as soon as the mayor issued the proclamation on January 2nd, everyone was on notice by statute that they had 12 days to get the petitions filed, which turned out to be Monday the 14th, and that the 16th was the last day to file an acceptance or a declination. It is simple as that. That has not changed. Those provisions of the election law have not changed as to the time frame for for the 20 years I've been here, and I believe it precedes me even further back.
At the same time, this is also an unprecedented citywide special election. So with all due respect, and I will finish this point, with all due respect, this is actually the procedures by both BOE and CFB have not been clear, because regardless of what you have on a site, and as somebody who also understands that you can have administrative laws that are very confusing to the public, that does not mean that it's clear to the public, especially to a first-time candidate, as to where that information is laid. You can have many information, and I specifically stated that what may be simple to you, Commissioner Shamoon, is not necessarily easy to be found out by a first-time candidate. But I'm also saying to you that I'm not standing here as somebody who did not correct upon notice that this was actually to be turned in. And if we're looking at, there is at least one precedent where on the Board of Election website, they show that when a candidate did not get proper notice via mail, that the commission, that Board of Election did give a 3-day grace period because of not getting it by USPS. I am stating that even according to the mailing that was filed to me that I have here that's postmarked on the 15th, that curing it on the 18th would have made it within that 3-day period. So we can talk about where we've made exceptions on administrative law, but I'm telling you that as soon as I found out, everything was brought in at that time. And I have video that shows that this calendar that you claim was on the table was not on the table, because it happened to be on the day that I was submitting my petitions.
I think you had a question on. You wanted to give that.
Commissioner, just so you know, the Court of Appeals has ruled on this in the case of Baker v. Monahan in 1977. The failure to comply with the prescriptions of the election law are fatal defects, since the intent and effect was to make it clear that the time limitations for filing are mandatory and to foreclose the judiciary from fashioning exceptions, however reasonable they might be made to appear. Thus, the failure to timely file the certificate of declination, but this is the same with the acceptance, are a fatal defect, and that's been reaffirmed by the appellate divisions throughout the state.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that case, and the question that where we have an issue is the timeliness of it, because I do think that the notice and aware, and yes, it says wherever there is a reasonable explanation, but I am going to continue to question the timeliness of this as well. If the notice is not there to just be a formality, but if the notice is there to notify a candidate that they have to then do an action, I was not able to do that action until I was aware that this was a requirement.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a motion has been called. Do we have yes. We have a motion? Has anyone made a motion? No, he's called the question. Is anyone making a motion on this? I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimously adopted. The candidate will not be on the ballot.
Prima facie report is adopted. The candidate will not appear on the ballot. Commissioner.